Welcome to Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Turner and Nathan Wangler.
Inside the Game is back. Hold on. There we go. Now can everybody hear me? Is that a little bit better? All right, now we can hear me. Let's start. Rip, roar, and start. Didn't even turn the microphone on. God, we've been away for a whole month. Didn't even turn the mic on. But welcome back in, everybody. Inside the Game, back live across your airways. Nate Wangler alongside Ryan Glinski for the revamped Season 2 of Inside the Game, as we're calling it. Bringing you guys a little bit of a wrinkle this time around. I know you guys have gotten used to listening to us talk about soccer and a lot about this U.S. men's national team. And that's, I would say, the majority of our focus today as we get ready for the 2026 World Cup. We're kind of at that perfect point for us to start Season 2 of Inside the Game because, again, we're transitioning a few months down the line right into World Cup time. So this is the perfect time to really get into the nitty-gritty on everything U.S. men's national team. We'll give you guys a look at our overseas overview, everything that's going on that side. But the other big part of our revamped look to this podcast, by the way, appreciate everybody that's coming back, is Hour 2. We're going to bring you guys some all sports content, and this is the perfect time of year to do so. We got everything going on. Obviously, we got NHL, NBA, but our big focus is going to be football, the end of the college football season. Ryan, and we'll talk more about this later. I like the 12-team playoff, but I still think it's inherently flawed. So we'll talk a little bit about that coming up. I also think this is the best playoffs we've had in college football since we started having a playoff system. So we'll talk about that a lot coming up. But let's start here. It was Christmas. So how did you enjoy your holiday? What did you get? I got some good stuff as well, but wanted to say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, all those to all of our listeners and anybody who's dropping back on our show. But how was it for you, Ryan?
It was great. Outside of the football game that happened on Christmas Day with the Lions and the Vikings, ultimately cutting our season short and creating a meaningless football game that I told myself yesterday was a meaningless football game, but I didn't act like it was a meaningless football game. I will tell you that. Again, I say that every time, like when Michigan was playing Texas or Michigan was playing Alabama last year in the whatever bowl, and then the Lions, like I always say, you know what, Ryan? It's a meaningless football game. Don't have to get worked up. All of a sudden, quarter two, usually get about midway through the second quarter, I'm like, oh my God, this is not a meaningless football game. It never is. But no, outside of that, got to see some family and that I haven't seen in a while, and it was a great time. And then I got a headset. I got a headset because we broadcast games remotely here at the National Soccer Network.
Absolutely.
So I got me.
What you got over there? You got an Audio Technica? What do you got?
Yeah, that's what I got. It's currently boxed up in my room right now, back at home. But I got that for if I want to broadcast remotely, because that's what we do here. Renovating the game of broadcasting here at the National Soccer Network. And outside of that, had some really good food. Ate a ton of food, I'll tell you that. And had a great Christmas. And then the next day, Michigan got the new football head coach. So happy about that. Also went to the CMU bowl game at Ford Field against Northwestern, and it was horrible because they sucked.
I mean, it's good to go to Ford Field. It's not good to watch what happened on the field, but I'm not going to lie, I was a little concerned going into that one because Northwestern has actually proven that they're actually not half bad. The amount of one-score games they lost this year against really good teams, including Michigan, I was like,
they could have won that. Really.
Yeah. So. But no, actually, on my side too, same thing. A lot of different things. The chaoticness of the holidays is something that is never lost on anybody. And I'll say this because I know JT mentioned it. Going into Thanksgiving, enjoy the single holidays while you can, because it gets a little bit more chaotic once you get past that. When you start introducing new people and new families and new family members, and now you're running all over the map, things change a little bit. The biggest thing you got to worry about is the sporting events, which I got to tell you, what an utter disappointment. I'm sure we'll go off about the Lions a little bit later, but single Christmas is much better, Ryan. I'm just saying, there's a lot less stress on your shoulders. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I do. I will say that's a stressless holiday. I'll tell you that. And I will say though, since we haven't been on air since we hit our milestone here, but shout out to everyone that has followed us on TikTok. We got over 1,000 followers. I think we're at 1,080 is what I'm looking at right now. So shout out to everyone following us. I know we had a goal of hitting 1,000 before the New Year's, and we hit 1,000 well before the New Year's. I think like 2 weeks to go. But we're at 1,080 and just creating really good videos, Nate and I, on that. So, again, shout out to everyone following us and eventually joining in on the show. So, thank you to that one. But I'm ready to get 2026 underway here on the Season 2 edition of Inside the Game, Nate.
And we're going to bring you guys a lot of great content, too. Also, important to keep in mind, so the second hour of our show is going to be on our All Sports platform. So, we're going to be doing that on the All Sports platform. Got different channels that we're going to be posting that through. We're hoping to maybe open up a new TikTok page as well, so we can share you guys some of our podcast clips on that one. But I guess the nice thing is with this part 2, this season 2 of Inside the Game, we got a little bit for everybody. So if you want your soccer fix, that's the first hour. Second hour, we'll be bringing you all sports, and we'll be bringing you guys new stuff as we continue to go. Before we dive into our show, I wanted to mention that my favorite gift that I got over Christmas. I don't know if you got to see this one.
You sent. I think you sent.
Remember? You see it? Okay, so I think Mauricio Pochettino is absolutely enamored by the movie Miracle. And I find it funny, right? Because we know that obviously hockey and soccer are two different sports, but what most people realize is that just to get to that game against the USSR was a miracle in and of itself. The fact that they won that game stands alone, but getting to that point was a miracle. But the Soviet Union, of course, at the time, I think it was 47 straight games they hadn't lost, beat the NHL All-Stars 6-0. And one of the biggest reasons is because they had the best goalie in the world, Vanislav Tretiak. And over Christmas, I ended up opening one of my gifts, and my girl actually got me a vintage USSR Vanislav Tretiak goalie jersey. So I'm gonna wear that one on the pod one of these days. That's just a cool piece of sports history. But that was one of my favorites. But anyways, diving into our show, hour 1 here on Inside the Game, the revamped version, episode 201. Wanted to talk a little bit about the group selection for the U.S. men's national team. That was one of those things we talked about in length on our social media channels. Obviously didn't get to chat about it on here, but we can show that on the screen. The group that the U.S. got in the expanded field in the World Cup. And Ryan, obviously you had a video on our social talking about how it's not creating more exciting matchups, specifically in the group stage. And I think for the U.S., that's honestly good news. That's not bad news. That's actually a good thing. Australia, Paraguay, and then TBD and the playoff C winner. Do we know who that third matchup is?
No, yet? But if I will say, I just assume that it's going to be Turkey. I think they're the best team out of those 4, which, again, I'm blanking on who those 4 are, but I think it'll end up being Turkey. So I think it'll be Turkey, Paraguay, and Australia, which, actually, funny enough, the U.S. has played, if it is Turkey, has played all 3 of these opponents within the last calendar year, I would say. Yeah, because they played Turkey. Yeah. So all 3 teams have been played within in 2025. So that's pretty cool to know, just because you have some familiarity there.
Yeah, and they have an understanding of, how competitive they are, and they looked good against them too. I think Australia, they didn't have a lot of their best players on the field. Obviously, Christian Pulisic, that was the last international friendly that he played in those windows before the New Year. So, and they were coming after him hard. And I remember Chris Richards talking after that game about how, like, physically they need to do a better job of standing up. And I think it was really, when I watched this team in the international windows, if you go back to that Australia game, like there's a moment in that game where I think it kind of switched for this team. And then every matchup since that point, completely different the way they carried themselves. Obviously, you saw the sideline mix up against Paraguay. And, I think Turkey would be obviously a hard matchup. But I think familiarity is one of those things that, we had mentioned, and we went through it multiple times on the podcast. What do these hypotheticals look like? Like, what's a group of death if the U.S. were to find themselves in one of those groups of death? And I feel like none of those countries you named are on this list right now. None of them are actually in this group that we're going to play. And you named a lot of top quality countries that we could potentially get. Does this change the expectation now? Because we mentioned how getting out of the group was obviously the most important. And that feels like the baseline in terms of expectations for the U.S. men's national team. Just get out of the group. But does the expectation change now that they're playing against the teams that they are, which I think they can beat Paraguay. I think they should be able to beat Australia. And obviously the winner of Group D, that might change a few things. Turkey, I think, is still very talented. I think they would give us certainly a run for our money. But does that change the expectations now for the U.S. men's national team because of where they are? It seems like a dream scenario, and there have certainly been a few that have said so.
It changes 100%. And I will say to the Turkey point, Turkey has been, whether that's the Euros or whether that has been the World Cup in recent years, they've always been considered like this dark horse team. Like, they're going to make a run. Everyone is always hypes up Turkey, and they're like, they're going to make a run this year. This is their tournament. They are going to upset some people. And then we get to the Euros and they fall flat on their face. We get to the World Cup and they fall flat on their face. So again, I'm just assuming that it's going to be Turkey at this point. I think they're going to come out of their playoff here. That's what I just think, and I don't think when it comes down to it, Turkey's going to show up just like they never do. But I will say this: the USA, they have to top their group. Like, my expectation has certainly changed that they will they must top their group at this point, because not just because of topping their group, but once they top their group, they have an easier pathway, I should say, into the quarterfinals. Like, they would then come up against Argentina if we predict everything on how things should pan out and how it ultimately should, then they should get into the quarterfinals with ease. So 100%, this whole expectations have changed. And you brought up a really good point there. Like, looking back on past groups, if we look at 2022 in Qatar, you had to come up against England. They were the 1 seed in that group. And England is certainly, that's a semifinal team that went all the way to the semis. Harry Kane blows a penalty. Shocker. England suck at PKs. Shocker, I know. And especially to happen to Harry Kane, Tottenham player. Shocker. They always choke. And then you come up against Iran, who was a good side. And then you have Wales kind of in that swing game, and you draw that one. And then obviously didn't qualify in 2018, but then you look back at 2014. That's a group of death. You come up against Ghana, who in 2010 knocked you out. And then you come up against Cristiano Ronaldo in Portugal. Portugal's no slouch, especially with Ronaldo back then in 2014. And then you have a group with the World Cup eventual World Cup champs with Germany, Thomas Müller, and how stacked of a team that was. Close on that team. That team was so good. And then all of a sudden, we get to 2026. Do people think it's rigged? I don't know, but certainly could. You could certainly make that case. But we look at this group. I'll pull it up again. When I was broadcasting the USL Academy games, as this is going on, I'm sitting there, I go, no way we're drawing Australia. No way we're getting Paraguay. No way we're getting this.
No way.
And our European team isn't even a hard European team, regardless of who it is. So I think 100% expectations have changed.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a good point, and this was something that, when I initially looked at it, and just looking at the rankings of these teams respectively, right? Australia is 26th. I think Paraguay is not even in the top 30. I believe they're outside of the top 30. And then, that leaves one European opponent, which, I think if anything, that's probably going to be our toughest matchup when you look at just across the board, if we had to play Turkey.
Real quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, but in the
playoffs,
you're good.
Go ahead.
It's Turkey, Romania, Slovakia, and I don't even know who that country is. So, again,
okay.
I think it'd be Slovakia or Turkey personally, and I think we both take care of that. And real quick, in our TikTok chat, Kevin Wright 500 says he is so excited for the World Cup, but it seems so far away. Let me tell you, Kevin, if you really think about it, it's not. It's only 5 or 6 months away, and it's going to come like that. So it's coming up close, or coming up quickly.
And it's going to happen in a snap. So the expectation, obviously, now is no longer get out of the group. I think this is a team that could go on it and win a quarter if they're able to build that type of positive momentum. And we'll dive into the individual matchups. But again, head-to-head, and it is hard admittedly, as an American, and I'll say this, I normally don't. The thing that turns me off, I feel like the most about sports now, is you always feel like there's a fix-in, right? The money, the gambling, the all that is now a part of the sports
It's a
scene,
lot.
right? We've introduced the fan graphs, the BetMGM. I mean, I just saw a video like a few weeks ago of a college basketball player, and I forget where it was. I think it was Memphis, Buffalo, I can't remember, that quite literally like gave up on a layup in order to hit on the money line to make some money, right? And even in the NIL era, we still got athletes taking advantage of that and wanting to take advantage of that. And so with the way that all of that has changed in the big money that we've introduced into sports, that switched around a lot. But I also feel like as an American, looking at this World Cup, has there been preferential treatment that FIFA has given to the United States? I believe so. And I don't know if it's because they're playing nice, because obviously the US is hosting this tournament and they've hosted all the different tournaments leading up to it, including the Club World Cup. I don't know if they're just appealing to the US because of what it does for FIFA. But it seems like there has been I was using that earlier point to talk about how the fix might be in. I don't want to go that far as to say the fix might be in, right? That is a large thing. That is a big deal to sit here and go, hey, the World Cup is fixed and it's fixed in our favor, right? But even as an American looking at that draw, is this a product of FIFA trying to give the Americans a gift? Or is this a product of our expanded field has watered down the competition for teams that are in the World Cup? Because you mentioned how with the expanded field, it's changed things a lot. There's a lot of teams that are going to the World Cup, which no hate. I mean, I love seeing a team like Haiti make it to the World Cup. That's awesome. I'm all for it. That's cool. But does it water down the competition? And does it take away from these group stage matches? Which one of it is it? I mean, is FIFA trying to favor the US and give them a leg up? Or is this a product of the field has just expanded so much that now our matchups are just they're so watered down?
I said a couple, gosh, I don't remember when this was. I think it was right after the draw, that the group of deaths are now dead. And
they're done. Yeah.
And I was talking with my cousin. He's a big soccer guy, soccer fan, and he was hyped for the World Cup. And we were talking and everything about expanded play and everything, because like if you think about it, let's look at American sports as a prime example. If you look at the NFL schedule for the playoffs this upcoming weekend, there's 2 games that suck, and the other ones are all really good matchups. Which ones suck? Yeah. The Rams and the Panthers, that sucks. And then you look at the the Texans and now the Steelers, which was a great game yesterday, by the way. So you take the 2, again, they're not 2 versus 7s, but all of a sudden, great matchups was 6 teams in each conference. Those were great matchups in the wild card regardless. Now you add that 7th team, and it sucks now. And then you kind of look at the college football playoff now. We went from 4 teams, which ultimately, not every single time in the 4-team playoff generated good games. Not even when it was just a straight BCS national championship generated good games. Shout out Notre Dame. You guys suck in big moments. But I will say this. Look at the 12. Does Tulane and James Madison really deserve to be in the college football playoff? No. You could argue no. You could argue yes.
Yeah.
But if you look at the games...
we'll talk about that later, for sure.
If you want to look at the games, they weren't good. And then you kind of look back at the year prior, Boise State, no reason to be a 4 seed. That game wasn't good. Then you look at the SMU Penn State game. So a ton of games weren't good. Then you look at this, but back to my point of what my cousin and I were talking about. He goes, I was looking for the normal World Cup in 2022. I was looking forward to every single group stage, whether that was Saudi Arabia versus I don't know, Panama or something. Like that game, those games meant something because you have to be the top 2 in your group. Now you can finish 3rd in your group and still qualify. And now we have a round of 32. So you could have Argentina going up against one of the best teams in the world, if not the best team in the world, going up against a 3 seed that just got out of it in Curacao. Do we really think Curacao has a fighting chance against Argentina? No, the game will be over in the first 20 minutes. So no, that it absolutely gets watered down, and we aren't going to absolutely have these better matchups. Kevin Wright also agreeing with me in the TikTok chat says no. I think the group stage is watered down as well. But I think the knockout stage is going to be awesome, and it is time for smaller countries. I think you can absolutely make that case. I think it's kind of looking to give the smaller guy, the underdog, that moment. That's why Tulane and James Madison is in the college football playoff. And by the way, while you were talking, Nate, I was still listening, but I went through the simulator for the U.S. So if the U.S. were to win the group, this is why it's so important to top the group. So if they go in top Group D, they would then come up across a third-place team, a team that finishes third place in their group. And then in the round of 32, then if they win that, they would come up against potentially a 1 seed in Group G. Yeah, in Group G, which you have Belgium, Iran, New Zealand, and Egypt. All those are winnable games. Belgium is not what they used to be. So if you can top Group D, you get to the quarterfinal. You have an easier path to get to the quarters.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it's what I will say is that when we talk about this, especially when it comes to the expanded field, I get caught up with, yes, giving the little guy, the smaller country, the smaller team, the smaller program, whatever it is, an opportunity to go out and win a championship. And I say that in quotes, right? Because even when we look at March Madness, right, Maryland, Baltimore County is not going to go on to win a national championship. They might beat Virginia, and that in and of itself is thrilling. I mean, that's something that you can look back on and be like, hey, that's one of the best tournament games of all time. But do we genuinely think that a team like that could go on to win a national championship? In basketball, it's a little bit different, right? Because it's just one and done. Like, it's a mad dash until the end. But is it a matter of giving the little guy an opportunity, or is it a matter of we need to expand the playing field in order to make more money? I think there's a little bit of that involved too, because I look at the college football playoffs, it's the same exact thing. I don't think that anyone cares, or anyone honestly thinks Tulane has a chance. They're still going to make their money on that game. They're still going to make their money on these games leading up to the actual games that matter, which is, Indiana and Oregon and everybody who's in the college football semi right now. Those are the games that actually have some weight to them. So I think there is a part of that. But now the path for the U.S. men's national team, just to put a bow on this, and this is something that has been echoed by multiple players, personalities, TV personalities, it's paved in gold. And if this isn't the time to strike, I don't know what is. Now, I still don't think they're going to win a World Cup. Like, I think it's important to mention that. But if you can get back to the semis for the first time since 2002, over 2 decades.
Quarters.
If you can do it, quarters, sorry.
We haven't been to the semis since the 30s. We're getting there.
Oh, so quarters. Yes, quarters is 2002, right. But if you can make your deepest run, well, since the 30s, 1930s, then
I remember where I was.
That's going to change a lot. Yeah, we're not alive.
No,
yeah, I wasn't. What's that? Go ahead.
Can we talk about the draw itself? Like, it was.
Oh yeah.
It was
my
2
goodness.
hours long with musical performances. We had to give medals out to the people putting it on. Like, every World Cup draw, every Champions League draw, every trophy competition in the world does not take that long. And I'm like, are we gonna get to
USA, baby?
It took an hour and a half.
That's how it goes. Everything's a show. It's the USA.
and then we didn't have we decided to have people who probably had no idea what was going on. We had Wayne Gretzky mispronouncing country names. We had Shaq, who probably had no idea what was going on. Tom Brady probably had no idea what was going on, and Aaron Judge probably has never touched a soccer ball in his life.
Hey, Brady owns a soccer club though, or a football club. He should know what's going on. Everybody
Birmingham,
else,
yeah.
Everybody else, I got. Yeah, you're right.
But it was.
I love how we put Shaq up there though. That's so funny. Papa John's Pizza in USA.
It was
soccer.
So Americanized, and the world thought it was. The world thought it was hilarious. Like, what are we doing here? And ultimately, I mean, you get the gist of it. We get the group the benefit of the doubt, but man, like, what are we doing with this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I even watched it back, and it was funny, some of the bloopers, struggling to get things open and all the different things that happened throughout the course of that 2-hour show, that carnival. It was very Americanized, and that was something that I laughed about. And I'm like, I know that the Twitter sphere specifically, and that's why I love that app, because the reactions to stuff is immediate. Like you don't even have to wait 5 seconds before someone's reacting to something that happened on that draw. And yes, very Americanized. Wasn't Taylor Swift in there? Wasn't she a part of it too?
I don't recall,
Wasn't T
but
Swift in there?
I couldn't.
Oh, okay.
I don't recall, but there absolutely could have been a possibility that she was there. I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah. All right, 6'7".
Oh wow.
Anyways, yeah.
Wow.
Moving on to our next point, though, taking a look at our overseas overview. A lot of different players that have been playing really well as of late. By the way, wanted to drop this one in because I know that you wanted to mention this. I offered Ryan the other day. I ordered a jersey online. It was an Everton jersey because I was going to go when they came to Soldier Field earlier this year to play. The plan was initially that I was going to go down and see those games. Did not end up going down and seeing those games, but I still have the jersey and it doesn't fit me. And so I go, Ryan, would you like an Everton jersey? It's a brand new jersey. He's like, no, I don't wear that. I'm like, okay, all right, fine, cool.
So, I will say I don't own a ton of jerseys. I'm not really a jersey type of guy, but I will say, soccer. Like you won't see me wearing a Lions jersey. You won't see me wearing a hockey jersey. You won't see me wearing a basketball jersey. Even though I do have a Jackie Moon jersey, but that's a little different. When it comes to soccer, I'm weird when it comes to that because I only wear a couple jerseys. I only wear an Arsenal jersey or Real actually 3 jerseys. A Real Sociedad jersey, an Arsenal jersey, or an SD Huesca jersey, who is like Division 2 or 3 in Spain. But it is also because those are gifts from my dad's coworkers because they're owners or partial owners of the team. So I get those as gifts. But I can't wear another Premier League club jersey. I just can't unless I
ever thought about.
Continue.
Go ahead. No,
unless
go ahead.
I have some sort of tie to the team through like. If I knew someone that was a partial owner or he was maybe I knew a player or a coach, I would wear it. But I'm weird when it comes to soccer because I'm trying to be like because like soccer like here in America some people might have like I'm a Lions fan, but I kind of like the Seahawks because Mike McDonald is the head coach there and he coached at Michigan, so I like that. But in soccer, I just like that. Like I just like that team and that's it. So I'm trying to like keep that mold going. I'm 100% grateful and generous for the offer, Nate, but I just can't.
Hey, you're
wear
welcome,
Everton
man.
Jersey.
I don't have any ties over in Europe, at least as far as I'm aware. But your dad's coworkers though, huh? Co-owners. You ever thought about broadcasting in Spanish?
I'd have to learn the language. All
right. I'm just saying, there's like Duolingo or whatever, and something you can hop on in order to do some play-by-play in Spanish. But either way, I wanted to mention this, and this was something that you wanted to drop in. Man United, Man United manager sacked again, another one sacked, and the last person to score for him. And this is my favorite fun fact heading into the show: Brendan Aronson. He's been on a good stretch too.
Yeah, that'll kind of lead into it before we do. But no, when I was sitting there before the show, I'm scrolling through Twitter because Manchester United fans, if I had to compare it to any sort of fan base in America, it's the Dallas Cowboys. Like it's, the glory days are past us. It's this massive global brand. And, someone in the media has always been a part of Manchester United. Like you kind of see, Michael Irvin, Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman, always a part of the Cowboys, Tony Romo, a part of the Cowboys. And it's always, this is our year. We did this. We changed coaches. This is finally it. And it never happens. And it's just been a revolving door ever since Fergie left. And Ruben Amorim, I again, always butcher his name. Hopefully I said it right. But
Ruben Amorim, I believe is what it is. I don't know.
I have no idea. But I wake up this morning and I see he got the sack and I'm like, but the funny thing is before the end of last season, their final home game, he goes, but the better days are ahead of us, and everyone starts clapping this, and this. Then Arsenal plays first game of the season at Old Trafford against Manchester United. And I'm like, man, Manchester United actually looked pretty good for a change. Like, they gave Arsenal a run for the money. No, that was just fool's gold. No, they lose to Arsenal, and then it just gets worse. But it's just a revolving door, and it's just facts that you just can't win by just changing coaches every 6 months. You just can't do that. At some point, you have to have a little bit of stability. But if you have any comments on that, I will at 100% transition that into American overseas overview.
Well, and I'd love to talk about who we're most impressed by throughout December, and obviously no international game. Well, some international games, but mostly with their club. So we'll talk about who we're most impressed with, because I think there's a few obviously names on that list that we should at least mention. But you're 100% correct. Here's what I'll say about Man U, right? Like, you need a coach, I feel like, to go through those struggles in order to emerge on the other side. But when you're such a historic club, right, and you talked about this ego that they have about themselves, that's when sometimes you see the changing of the guard happen so fast, because of the expectations that are built from that fan base, right? Like, even like we talk about the all sports stuff, the expectations are set for some of these universities. And if you struggle in 1 year, all it takes is 1 year sometimes to be out of there, and out of there quickly. And then you start seeing this carousel effect where it's just one after another. And you and I have seen this from the teams that we're fans of. Man U has to give their managers some time to at least struggle a little bit and try at least to build something or come out of the other end on it. Because you're right, you can't just keep replacing managers time and time and time again and expect anything different. I mean, that's you're right, that's ignorance. Like, you're doing something that you know doesn't work, but you continue to go back to the well and try it and try it and try it again. And I think that's the position that Man U is in right now, because again, did not have enough success. 6 months, a couple months down the line, he's gone. So I think that's important, but you're right. An American, the last one to score for him before he got the axe. But who has impressed you the most over the month of December? A lot of different players that we've talked about. I think Weston McKennie has looked outstanding. I think he's been on a run. I think Chris Richards looked great. Obviously, some injury concerns there. And then obviously we mentioned Christian Pulisic left off the Guardians' top 100 list, top 100 footballers in the world. Pulisic not in the top 100. Interesting to me. But Ryan Glinski, who impressed you the most in December?
I think it has to be Brendan Aronson. By the way, I've been talking with Kevin Wright in our TikTok chat. We've been talking. He said he's from his favorite team is Orlando City for the MLS and Orlando Pride in the NWSL. He said he grew up in Northern California, but now lives in Florida. So shout out to him. He's been active in our TikTok chat. And again, if you are watching us anywhere else and can't comment, make sure you comment on anything. We'll 100% gladly read your comments. But to answer your question, Nate, it has to be Brendan Aronson. And he was getting a lot of backlash recently. And also, we got to remember here that, Leeds United got promoted into the Premier League. And there's that little bit of, some teams can do it. But for most newly promoted sides getting into the Premier League, there's a little bit of I would say, learning curve, maybe kind of like they got to get adjusted back up to the speed in the game of the Premier League, because, you're playing against $100 million plus players week in and week out. But, he got a little bit of stick from all the fans. And then all of a sudden, he grabbed a couple of assists, a couple of hockey assists, if you want to call that as well. And then he grabs a goal yesterday against Manchester United, and he had a 7.3 FOTMOB rating. And we'll pull up the rest of the graphics after this. But the Leeds fans have been really impressed with the way he played yesterday. They said he was the only player out on the pitch that that played it like a true derby. And that shows the grit and toughness. That's something that we need. And especially for the men's national team, if we think about it, Aronson could be a very valuable piece off the bench, playing those last 20, 25 minutes to either A, see a game out, or two, you need a goal, an equalizer, trying to take the lead, advance, grab those 3 points or advance in the knockouts. This is a player that can absolutely make an impact for us. But, who's your guy, Nate, for the last month?
Well, and I like your points that you made there about Aronson. And the truth is, and I said this on that social media video, he's going to be on the roster. I really don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, where he comes into play, I like the position you're putting him in. The final 20, 25 minutes, he can be a spark plug for this team. And the best part about Aronson, when you look at his numbers and what he's done, just take the last 8-9 matches and then compare that to his first 45 plus in the Premier League. completely different, right? Completely different ends of the spectrum. And sometimes we see with these young players, right? Like at a certain point, it clicks. At a certain point, it clicks for them mentally. And I think Aronson is kind of going through that step right now where it's starting to click for him a little bit more. So hopefully that Mauricio Pochettino's seeing this. And he was very adamant. He was very loud about how he does not care necessarily about the best players. He wants to find the right fits. And I think if Aronson is someone that fits into that mold, he's someone that fits into that mold. I'm going to feel like this is going to come off as someone who's like really beating the drum right now. But I think it's worth mentioning simply because I just don't think people understand just how good the guy is. And they're not going to understand until he does it on the world stage. And that's Christian Pulisic, right? Because people look at Serie A and they're like, that league's not what it used to be. It's not one of the top leagues in the world. It is a top 5 league, by the way. I don't know how you argue anything else outside of that. I believe Serie A is a top 5 league in the world.
100%.
But right now you have Christian Pulisic, who's leading the Golden Boot race. You're close to tied to the Golden Boot race, actually, I should say. But you got to keep in mind, he's not just doing that playing the same amount of minutes. He's playing about half of the amount of minutes as the other man who is in that race, Lautaro Martinez, who is also in that race to win the Golden Boot in Serie A. So he's playing half the minutes. He's tied in the race to go win that one. And we've seen a lot of different Italian reporters talk about he is one of the most underrated players maybe in that league in history, in disrespected and misunderstood. And I think a lot of that goes back to the American bias, and I'll continue to double down on that because I don't think people are willing to admit it, especially outside of the United States. But he is in the thick of the race to be the Golden Boot winner in a top 5 league in the world with half of the minutes. I mean, the efficiency in which he's scoring right now is something on a level that we haven't seen in Christian Pulisic's career to this point. And so the question of, does he have any bargaining power? Where does he stand with the club? Do they need him? Do they need to somehow find a way to keep him around and pull out all the stops? This is why, when it comes to contract negotiation for Christian Pulisic, why he was holding out, right? Because the way he's playing right now, and obviously he wanted to see where the club went. He wanted them to achieve certain things before he was willing to put pen to paper. But this is one of the biggest reasons why, because he's proving it on the field and he's going, hey, this is how valuable I am to your club. This is how valuable I am to Serie A and to Italian soccer in general. If you want to keep me around, fine. If not, there's somewhere else. And I know that there's at least a few teams in the Premier League that would be willing to put pen to paper to get Christian Pulisic. And so the fact that the Guardian would leave him off the top 100 is malarkey to me. It's absolute malarkey to me, personally.
Kevin Wright in our TikTok chat said, is it just because people hate America? That could be partially true. I also think that there's an American bias for sure.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. I don't think maybe they hate America. I don't think you can't say no to that. There's a lot of people that if you don't live in America, there's a pretty good chance you have an opinion or two about America, right? Like that's just how it works. Like we look at ourselves. I don't see anything wrong. I mean, I didn't do anything to anybody, but I was born in this country, and we're all fat. We all like drama. We're all we do our things because we're Americans, and so there's probably a little bit of that, right? But the hardest thing for me is that the influx of American players playing in these leagues in Europe really has taken off. And Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you could say the last 5 to 10 years, it's started to really ramp up. And now it's getting to a point to where more players than not, especially on our international side, are playing in these leagues in Europe. I mean, this isn't just a collection of MLS players. Like, yeah, we have a lot of MLS players who have played in these international windows, but the Americans are starting to catch up a little bit, and especially on an individual basis. Now, on the international team basis, again, 2026 is going to tell us a lot as opposed to how far we've grown in this. But on an individual player basis, we're starting to get there. And I think that just makes the world a little insecure. I don't think it's about being American. I think it's about if they were to play us in hockey, right? If let's take England for a second. If they were to play us in hockey, we'd beat them 10-1, okay? If they were to play us in basketball, we beat them by 40, right? If they were to play us in, yeah,
Straight.
I mean, you name the sport, we'd probably just beat the hell out of them. But the one sport that we have never been able to ever convincingly show the world that we're one of the best teams on the men's side. Yep, you're right. That's required. Is the sport of soccer or football. And the fact that we even call it soccer, I think, is part of the reason why they hate us.
That's true.
Us in Australia and whoever the other country is that calls it soccer. But that, I think, is the reason why Europeans and people from other parts of the country just feel uncomfortable. And you have to consider the source, too, when you talk about that Guardian article. They're in the UK. Like, of course they're not going to put an American in the top 100. That doesn't surprise me at all that a UK publication would be like, no, Christian Pulisic's not a top 100 player. You're wrong.
Should have been. 100%.
You're wrong. But that is why, at least I think, to respond to his comment. I think maybe they don't like America, sure, but I think it's also that insecurity of, outside of rugby and soccer, we do pretty well for ourselves. We do really well for ourselves. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons, at least from what I see.
Yeah, I agree with you. But let's look at the overseas overview real quick, which we were supposed to get to a while back.
Yeah, eventually.
But I got 4 of them based off this weekend. We already talked about Aronson having a goal against Manchester United yesterday, a 7.3 FOTMOB rating. Weston McKennie also with a goal, a 7.9 rating. We kind of talked about, the individual performances that these players have been having, and really good so far. Jedi finally back. He's been back in the month of December, and this was against Liverpool, a full 90 minutes, 7.7 rating. And I will tell you, watching that game, Anthony Robinson looked unbelievable, locking down defenders, getting up in the play like normal, and also I think goal of the season nominee Harrison Reed, equalizer in the 96th minute for Fulham. If you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it. It's like a 25-yard screamer that he put it into the upper 90 where no goalie in the world could get. And then Christian Pulisic also with a goal this weekend, 7.7 FOTMOB rating. And I also did not mention Ricardo Pepi currently had a £35 million offer from Newcastle. PSV rejected that. Of course, we're in the January transfer window right now, and you can still go buy players, loan players, which there's something with Messi that we might have to monitor as well. I forgot to put that out on socials. I was meaning to yesterday. But Ricardo Pepi, I would say he is our second or third string striker, valued at £35 million, and PSV rejects it to Newcastle. Newcastle's not a slouch either, and they're trying to recoup some of that Isak minutes and impact that they're missing, that production. But $35 million for Ricardo Pepi rejected.
Lot to touch on there, and valued at $35 million. That's a good chunk of change.
Or actually,
he does have 7 goals this year.
Three Champions League goals, 7 in Eredivisie, 10 goals in that would be 19 matches, 11 goal contributions in 19 matches. Ricardo Pepi, he's a player that is trying to make his case to get on the World Cup roster as well. But other clubs around the world, and to your point, Nate, like these players, even if you look at Chris Richards, who's hurt at the moment, that's another player that not a hot prospect, but he's a player playing in a top flight minutes week in, week out, constantly playing well. And it's funny, after he gets hurt, Arsenal scores a goal right after he gets hurt, and Crystal Palace been leaking some goals ever since. But no, like if you look at the players, look, I view it this way in terms of American soccer right now. And let me put this in hockey terms for people that might not fully understand it. And my friend gave me this reference last year when I was watching the Four Nations. If you look at the Canadian national team for hockey, you have Hall of Famers from the first line to the third line to the fourth line. You look at the USA hockey team, you have Hall of Famers on the first and maybe the second line. We don't have that all the way down. So we might have some equal talent in terms of the first line and the second line, but we don't get that all the way down. In terms of American soccer, our Hall of Fame quote-unquote player, Christian Pulisic, maybe you could say a Jedi Robinson because he's arguably the best left back in the Premier League last year. No. Maybe you could throw in a Ricardo Pepi for Eredivisie. Maybe you could throw in a Fuller and Balogun. But the point being, we don't have Hall of Fame players in our full starting 11. We might have a position here or there, but the world has got to admit that our players, our team, even growing here domestically, we have a growing nucleus of talent here in the United States on our national team. 100% we do. In the world,
Yeah.
the moment that the U.S. cracks soccer, the men's side, that is, the world's gonna have no idea what to do. They might just quit. Might just quit sports all in general, because the moment we do that, the moment that U.S. somehow hoists a World Cup and somehow Donald Trump gets in the celebration because he's Donald Trump, the world is gonna have no idea what to do.
No issue. Yeah. No. Yeah. There. Yeah. It's going to be a hard reset in the minds and in the hearts of international soccer fans if the U.S. is able to pull that off. So, no, I you're right, and I talked about it, and the comparison that I made is, kind of like in Australia in the NBA. Truth is that they're not. If they were to go up against Team USA, they're going up against a team of Hall of Famers, whereas Australia has great individual players.
You don't think Ben Simmons would cook us for 30 points?
Yeah, I mean, they would still find a way to. I don't know, man. He was the truth when he first came in. I know we got all sports coming up here in about 15 minutes. So
remember when Colin Cowherd
says,
LeBron, we're good. Ben Simmons is here. That take aged like milk.
I guess you gotta be willing to take it on a chin once in a while.
I think I have a better jump shot than Ben Simmons. So much Ben Simmons.
Probably.
My bad.
Probably. No, but with that size and speed, though, it should be able to translate. But whatever that is, exactly. But let's get into our final segment here on Inside the Game, first hour here before we get into all sports starting at the 10 o'clock hour. Let's take a look at some of our mailbag questions. The reason why I wanted to do that was because we only made about 700 TikTok videos during the month of December, and we got about 7 million responses on those TikTok videos. So wanted to chat about that a little bit. Obviously appreciate you guys joining us live again. Make sure you hit us up wherever you find your social media. National Soccer Network is where you'll find us. We'll be posting our clips, obviously, from this show and everything else. But got a little bit for everybody with our all sports segment coming up later. But what do you got? Give me some doozies. What do we have here?
We're gonna space it out here because you and I have posted a ton of videos. This one coming up yesterday, I made a video about how the World Cup wants to make a halftime show, which it makes so. I don't know if you've ever watched a Champions League final or a Euros final or World Cup final, but they do have a musical performance, but it's always before the game. They always have a musical performance before the game. This year in the Champions League, it happened to be Linkin Park, which again, big Linkin Park fan.
Nice.
So that if I didn't watch that, I would not have gone to a Linkin Park concert this summer with my sister and my dad. If we did not watch that, we would not have known about the tour. But anyway, that resulted in us having that. But they want to do this at halftime show, which could then grow the halftime from 15 minutes, which it is normally, to 30 plus minutes. And one commenter says, his name is Bacon. That's a pretty good name. Says, I don't think it'll go down with any of the teams either. A lot of time teams get into the game in the first half. For this to just get reset by a performance, this is a horrible idea. I think it is a bad idea because I think, sure, we can have a musical performance, but do it before the game.
You're coming to the United States, it's going to be a show. It's going to be a show. It's going to be a production. They're going to do everything they can to try and bring out all the stops in order to bring the pizzazz and bring the show to life. I mean, it's the entertainment business, and I don't mean to make Americans sound shallow when I say that, but that's the truth, right? Like they're going to lean into that. They're going to lean into the fact that we're in the United States and that there has to be a musical performance and there has to be all these other things. It's about the experience for FIFA, right? They're trying to build that. But the hard thing is that I guess, if I'm going to spend that much money to be at a World Cup game, which we've talked about World Cup ticket prices, and I'm sure that's something we could talk about every single episode if we wanted to, because people love to bitch and yell about that, which, I mean, may as well, right? Like, I would do the same exact thing. But if I'm going to spend an arm and a leg to go watch a World Cup game, I guess I better have some halftime entertainment to go along with that. I hope the match itself is entertaining enough, right? I hope, it lives up to the billing and it makes it worth the money that I spent on it. But, maybe at the same exact time, that's FIFA's idea of, hey, we got to give these guys actually something that is makes their money worth it. So hopefully they pick a couple of good musical performers. I think it's overkill, but I think it's par for the course.
Speaking of ticket prices and anything, I made a video yesterday about how FIFA is going to charge fans to get into like a watch party or like a fan fest for the first time in World Cup history. They're looking to charge $12.50 for this. Again, it's not some arm or a leg, but it's kind of the principle of we didn't get to go to the game, we're trying to watch it with the crowd. But anyway, Antonio 90_91 says at this point it'll be cheaper to travel to Europe to watch the Champions League final than a World Cup group stage game. Shaking my head. And then before you answer this one, Nate, Blue 25 Omega I think might have the best comment of the day. He says free on an antenna TV and the comfort of your own home. He's not wrong.
Yeah, well, and it's true, and but the hard thing is this, right? And I said this before, and I know that we talked about this, and you and I specifically, I think, disagreed on this point. Nothing replaces being in person. There's absolutely nothing that will ever replace being in person. And even from a broadcasting perspective, I mean, we talked about how, obviously here at the National Soccer Network, we do a lot of remote broadcasts. Remote broadcasting is kind of our focus. That's our thing. But even then, in the convenience and everything else that goes along with being in a place where you don't have to deal with the weather conditions, you don't have to deal with a lot of the other troubleshooting that you would have to deal with if you were on site, obviously the wires, the setup, the big old production truck, all that stuff. Still at the same time, it doesn't necessarily feel the same some days, right? Because you don't get the crowd reactions, you don't get the environment, you don't get the smells, you don't get the senses going. And that's why, like, whatever we broadcast, right, like I open up the window, I want to be a part of the conditions that they are in outside. So it's not, it really genuinely is not the same. But that's the way that the majority of people, at least middle class people, are going to do it because they simply cannot afford to go. But I've always said if like the Olympics came to the United States, absolutely I would do it. I would do anything to go watch the Olympics. But I feel like that would be far more reasonable than whatever FIFA is trying to do to the American consumer with the prices that they're charging right now. Not even the American consumer. I'm thinking about people that are flying over here as well, right? And I said this in that video, like the ticket price is one thing. Now think about hotel. Now think about meals. Now think about everything else that you have to pile on top of that. It's a different ball game, and it's going to hurt for a lot of people. But, I'm sure some people have been saving their whole life for a moment like this.
Oh, easily. And this one is on your controversial Sydney Sweeney Christian Pulisic post, which ultimately is false, but people thought they were dating. But anyway, this one's from Chris Kilroy. He says, "At least we are a proper footballing nation now." In parentheses, even more so because the rumor is fake. But hey, game is game.
It is. Well, and for Christian Pulisic, I love his response to it. He's like, "No, I'm not. I'm focused on soccer." And I'm like, yes. All right. I like that. That's awesome. My man's focused on one thing and one thing only, and that's playing the game and trying to go out and win a World Cup. No one's distracted here. No one's going on dates. No one's introducing any drama to the locker room. Listen, I assume that it was probably not true. I don't know who starts this, but that's just, it's one of those things where it brought Christian Pulisic into the mainstream. And I think I said that in the video, like, you want to introduce yourself into the mainstream, this is one quick way to do it. I don't think he was doing it intentionally. Clearly it was not true. It was not something that was actually happening. But that's the part that just cracked me up the most about it was you never expect to see him in any circles outside of soccer circles. Pulisic is just not that. If you were to, sometimes if you were to just sprinkle a little bit more ego into Christian Pulisic, it would be, dude. I mean, he would be.
Well, go ahead. Why do people like a ton of the NBA players? Because they're dramatic. Why do people like wide receivers so much? Because they're dramatic. Like, you have to have some sort of controversy with you a little bit. Like, why do people talk about LeBron so much? It's because he complains and thinks he got shot every time he gets touched, and when he doesn't get the call, he thinks like the world is ending. If you threw, what would be a good example? If you threw like the ego of like, trying to think here this could get controversial. If you threw the ego of a Diego Pavia on
Ooh.
Christian Pulisic.
Ooh.
Christian Pulisic would be talked about in the mainstream media around the world.
Yeah.
For like every single day.
Yeah.
Because not only do I hate Diego Pavia, and most of the world most of the country hates Diego Pavia, not only because he's an overrated quarterback and he thinks that he's like Tom Brady, good player, but he's not this top level quarterback that he thinks he is. Oh my Lord, could you imagine that? If you threw Zlatan's ego on Christian Pulisic, oh my Lord, Christian Pulisic would be unreal. And speaking of Pulisic,
He tried to get him there. Zlatan did.
Yeah, you're right. Zlatan tried telling him.
He tried.
And Pulisic was like, nah, bro. Like, I'm
not
quite,
me.
which, again, I can respect. But if you're going to come out and complain a little bit about, because, a lot of Pulisic has before about, how we don't get these fans at this, and this, and this. Well, you also might have to give them a reason for coming to it, the game. But then this one, this is coming from your top 100 video. Again, this feels like such a long time ago. Mustafa El, I don't even want to pronounce his last name, says, I can name over 200 players better than Pulisic. And then this guy in the same comment named Just That Film decided to write down 50 players that are better than Christian Pulisic listed in the comment. And I'm telling you, based on some of these, I could probably tell you that Pulisic is better than 80% of that list that he just listed. Like, he's better than Cole Palmer. He's better than Jadon Sancho. He's better than Garnacho. He's better than Pedro. He's better than Højlund. He's better than Sesko, better than Rashford. Like, to the point is that I just think that the world is in denial at this point in terms of American soccer. Like, I just think they're like, it's like me with Indiana football at this point. Like, I just don't want to admit it that they're good. Like, I'm just in denial at this point. Like, I'm constantly going to move the goalpost for them.
Yeah. Well, and so that's 50.
Yeah.
Right?
Which
that's not 100.
Exactly.
So keep going. Keep going. Right? Like, okay, you named 50 players that are better than him. This is a list of the top 100. So keep naming players. And I believe under the comment, if I can name 200 better than him, I was like, okay, do it. Like, it's one thing to be like, hey, I can do this. Okay, then do it. What are you talking about? So that's the funny thing, especially with some of these comments. It's like, well, I don't want to put the effort in to tell you who's better than he is. I just want to claim that there are 200 players that are better than him. So again, no, there is 100% a bias against American players. So that's why I think that the 26 World Cup is even more important. I think we got time for one more, though, if we want to work one more.
One more. And not only are Americans making ground, player-wise, but also managerial-wise. Pellegrino Matarazzo, first Real Sociedad, or first American manager to ever manage in La Liga. He's currently the manager of Real Sociedad, who is having a little bit of a down year in terms of what they did and what they're what they normally do. Also, thank you for Martin Zubamendi, by the way. He is so underrated and so good. But anyway, this guy Maya under U21, a crazy one. He says, because I think you may have mentioned, maybe he's a future U.S. men's national team manager in the video, but he says, let him stay coaching in Europe. I'm excited to see the career of what he does as a manager over in Europe. Maybe at the end of the day, maybe years down the line, he becomes a manager, but wants to see what he does. And I think that's a fair point. Not only do you have to have, players, you also have to have someone to bring this collective group together. And unfortunately for the U.S. right now in our process and our progression in the game of soccer, we don't necessarily have the coaches to do that for us. Like, why? Like, some managers, some in different sports, there's, American coaches, maybe coaching basketball overseas because, that's America's game. Over here, we will have to bring in a foreign manager to coaches, and that's what we have right now with Pochettino. Even look at Jurgen Klinsmann back in the day, a German a manager managing the USA. But no, it's great to see. And not only, Jesse Marsch was doing it a little bit with Leeds, and now we have another one at Real Sociedad.
Yeah, and I don't think it's fair to give up on Mauricio Pochettino just yet. I think he's.
I wouldn't say that. No. I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, exactly. So it'd be one thing if he was falling flat on his face and lost the majority of those international windows and chaos and everything. Then we could start talking about that, maybe speeding up that process a little bit quicker. But I think I truly think Poch is on to something with this team. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's going to look like coming up in the World Cup. But hey, that'll wrap up hour number 1 here on Inside the Game, our soccer portion of the podcast coming up next. We'll take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll get into our all sports talk, talking a little bit college football playoffs. We'll see how much of that portion that ends up taking up. I know we wanted to work in some NFL talk as well. If that has to wait for tomorrow, it has to wait till tomorrow. But we're going to talk about all that when it comes up next. Thank you for tuning into our first hour. If you're dipping out now, again, follow us on social media, wherever you find your social media at the National Soccer Network. For those of you who are sticking around, all sports coming up next here on Inside the Game. What? You playing the crickets right now?
I'm not playing the crickets.
Where's that sound coming from? Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. That was coming from my end. All right. Anyways, welcome back. Hour number 2 here on Inside the Game. Our first crack at this all sports stuff. We're going to talk about everything.
Crickets. People hate it already.
Crickets. It's already boring. Gosh. All right. Well,
people already hate it.
Good start for us on this. Welcome back in for hour 2. This is the portion of our revamped, our season 2 portion of Inside the Game that we wanted to bring to you guys. A look at all sports, everything that's going on in the sports world. And man, the truth is, and we've talked about this, when you take a little bit of time off as a sports show or as someone who talks about anything that's relevant in the sports world, you're probably going to miss some stuff. And during the month of December, we missed a lot, at least from the all sports perspective. Now, I know that this is new. This portion of our podcast is new, so we're going to try to get into all of it now. But we'll start off with the college football portion of things because I want to chat about the semifinal coming up as well as our predictions on who could go on to win a championship. But Ryan, I wanted to say this first, and I wanted to give you a chance to maybe address this. Indiana football is right now they're the best story in sports. And I know that it's hard for people who are, maybe didn't know about the Indiana lore beforehand. I feel like people who have been fans of Big Ten schools, I kind of understand what this program has been in the past. And what it is, it's the worst, statistically, and I've said this before, the worst college football program in the history of Division I football. First team ever to 700 losses. There was a mentality when Curt Cignetti got in there, even after what he did at James Madison, that you cannot get it done at Indiana. And he wasn't the first. And what was it? Tom Allen, who was before him, I believe that's what his name was great. I mean, he won games. He developed Michael Penix
there, I'll be honest.
Right. And Michael Penix he developed, who obviously went to Washington, nearly won a national championship.
Sucks
had a lot of success at Indiana. Well, yeah. Well, he's a lefty, dude. I mean, I don't know. But the thing that he couldn't get it done. He had a couple of good years, couldn't get it done. Really, 2020 was like the peak of Tom Allen's time. That was peak Indiana when he was there. Couldn't get it done, right? And he was a very good coach. And so Curt Cignetti comes in, and again, there's this attitude of you simply cannot do it. So for them to win the Big Ten championship, make it there for the first time since the 60s, and now what they're doing in the national championship picture, and we can talk about the downfall of Alabama football too, because I'm starting to wonder if they made the right. I'm starting to wonder if they made the right choice with Kellen DeBoer. But the biggest thing that I want to talk about right now is just this Indiana wagon and how they've really turned into. I firmly believe they're the best team in college football. I still do, even out of the 4 that we see left. But this has to be the best. That has to be the best story in college football right now.
I would say yes, but the thing is what ruins it for me is the Indiana fan base. That's what 100% ruins it for me. Like you look at for people who don't know, I have a college football account, and I personally did not think last year Indiana football was good. So if you look back at the games, they didn't beat anyone with substance. It was a lot of empty calories, I would say, because if you look at the 2 games that they played where a team had a pulse, a.k.a. Ohio State, the eventual national champions, and Notre Dame in the first round of the playoffs, they didn't look impressive at all. Like, Cignetti was running the football in the fourth quarter down, I think, like 14, 17 points with 8 minutes to go, when in reality, you should be throwing the football to try to get back in the game, and people just thought it was a trying to hide and trying to hide a blowout potentially, and to keep their spot in the college football playoff, which could be smart. I guess, it worked out in the end, but, I'm sitting there and Cignetti talks all this rah-rah and he's getting blown out like that, and you're doing that. And as a guy who's so tough and puffing my chest out, I'm going to go on national television instead of hyping up my team in the locker room. I'm just going to go on game day to say we beat the piss out of top 25 teams. Yeah, for sure, man. You look at the Notre Dame game, that game wasn't close. There's a couple garbage time touchdowns that made the scoreline look a little bit respectable. And then we come into, and I mentioned videos on that. People didn't like that. And then I mentioned that the Virginia series or something, he got rid of so he could play Kennesaw State. And I said it's soft. And then, I'm constantly saying Cignetti sucks, constantly saying Indiana's overrated. Then they play Oregon. And then I say, oh, my apologies. I didn't realize. I wasn't familiar with their game, Indiana. I wasn't familiar. Then the Indiana fan base gets on me again because I apologized. I'm admitting to you that I'm wrong. And most people, especially in the sports media industry, can't admit when they're wrong. I'm admitting to you, Indiana, that I'm wrong, yet you're mad at me. Then I make a video that Indiana has the blueprint of a championship team because they have that fourth quarter game-winning drive against Penn State, which unbelievable catch. They still get mad at me. So I hope Indiana gets blown out by Oregon. I hope they lose because you, Indiana fan base, your little insecure little fan base who wants to be validated and everything because you're finally new to the party for the first time in 100+ years. You ruined it for me because you're a damn good football team. Like, you're a damn good football team. But you guys ruined it. You guys are worse than Ohio. No, you're not. I wouldn't go that far. You're worse than Michigan State fans. That's what I would say.
So let's get into our predictions on this, because I think that there's a lot to really dive into on this. And I will say, you talked about backing out of harder matchups in order to get easier matchups. I mean, just look at Ohio State. I mean, it's like decades and decades of doing that. Like, that's how they play 2 teams with a pulse this year, and they lose to both of them consecutively. I mean, that's congratulations.
You don't think those Wolverines had a pulse? You don't think the Sharon Moore?
I don't think. No.
You think Arch Manning had a pulse?
No, not quite. But I'm happy those 2 teams got to play each other at the end of the bowl game. The
chippy game.
Bowl. It was fun. But getting into our predictions on who we think are going to win these matchups, let's start off with Miami and Ole Miss. And I'll give you the floor, and I'll let you know what I think about this. But, from watching their game against Ohio State, I think defensively they looked really sound. I thought they were on top of things. I think Miami is the favorite in the game against Ole Miss. I think the Canes have a really good pass rush, and I think that's something that can make an entire difference, and they put that on display against Ohio State. They expose that offensive line. But where do you fall on Miami and Ole Miss?
So in my eyes, to win football games is dominate the line of scrimmage. And Miami, it's a tale as old as time. Ohio State gets dominated at the line of scrimmage, they lose a football game. Look at it, the Michigan games over the years. Didn't quite happen this year, but it happened against Indiana, and then it happened again against Miami. And Reuben Bain's an absolute dog, man. Like I think Miami's defensive line had 5 or 6 sacks in the game. And there's a offensive tackle that I would love for the Lions to get. Again, I'm gonna butcher his name, Francis Mauagai. I don't know, but this kid's a stud at offensive tackle. Yeah. I would love, because I think Taylor Decker ultimately retires, but I would absolutely love for Miami to do it, to get him. And I will say this: as great as the Trinidad Chambliss story is, I think there's flaws in his game. And as much as I would like Ole Miss to win a national championship because Lane Kiffin got up at midnight and left and went to LSU to and I don't even know who's coaching for Ole Miss at this point. I would like Ole Miss to win, and I think the Trinidad story of him going from Ferris State. But I think there's a lot of flaws in his game. I think that he doesn't go through progressions really well. But if Miami makes this a backyard football type of a game, a flag football type of a game, that's playing into Trinidad's hands, and that's playing into Ole Miss's hand. Because if you get into that type of a style, I think Ole Miss wins that game. But if Miami kind of play the way against Ohio State, I think they win this game comfortably. Now it comes down to, I'm always going to say this, if Mario Cristobal is going to Mario Cristobal, and we know what that means of running the football when you don't have to and you fumble and you lose a game, he always has a boneheaded mistake, and we haven't seen that yet. But I still think Miami wins, and I would love for Miami to win a national championship just because I fell in love with Miami during the 30 for 30 documentaries of the U and of how dominant those teams were. And the 2001 Miami team is the greatest college football team of all time. They're better than the 29. Their third and fourth stringers were Hall of Famers eventually in the NFL. That's just unheard of. And you have Devin Hester, who's a kick returner, who's going to be a Hall of Famer, a kick returner. But anyway, I like Miami to win this game. I think they dominate the line of scrimmage. But if they turn it into a backyard football game, I think Ole Miss runs away with it.
Well, and that's the point, and talking about Julian Sayin after the Michigan-Ohio State game, and I remember talking to some of my buddies who are OSU fans and going, Julian Sayin is a silent assassin, which I think in that game he was. I think he picked apart Michigan. I think when they were able to find, obviously single coverage, and we tried using that bracket coverage like we did a year ago, that worked for us. Ohio State was ballsy. And that's the one thing that Ryan Day learned from 2024 is I got to coach the way that my team is built. And he did that against Michigan. And that's why they ended up going out and winning that game. And obviously on the other side, I think starting – obviously, with the amount of money you're paying him, you had to start Bryce Underwood. You didn't have any other option than to start the kid. So I think they figured out a way to coach against Michigan, but I think the hangover effect from that is really what led to what happened in the following 2 games. But all that to be said, what I will say about that's true. Yeah, what I will say about Trinidad Chambliss, though, I understand that maybe it doesn't look as pretty. And obviously coming out of Ferris State, I feel like there's feelings of, I want to support the kid just simply because he's from Michigan. He's from the Division II level. And Ferris State is different, by the way. I mean, Ferris State, I think they have, 6 players in the NFL right now? I think 6 players in the NFL from Ferris State. Wild, absolute wild stuff.
I'll give it a Google search.
But when you are Trinidad Chambliss, his mobility and his dervish whirling all over the place style, his ability to run, that is something that gives him an opportunity that, as you said, the Buckeyes didn't have with Julian Sayin. Julian Sayin is not a scramble around quarterback. He's a very good pocket passer. He's very good when he has protection. That's something we didn't see in the game against Michigan that we saw in multiple years before. Our defensive line won that game in 2024. We didn't have a pass rush. We didn't put any sort of pressure on him. So when he's able to sit back there, oh, yeah, I mean, he's got, Maseratis and Mustangs and everything else around him that he can throw the football to. Trinidad Chambliss, yeah, he needs that, but one of the best things about his skill set is his ability to improvise. And so this is something that I think is really important for them offensively. He can still improvise, he can still create, and that's what makes him dangerous. On the other side of the ball, though, Carson Beck is an interesting story because in the first 2 playoff wins that they have, he hasn't thrown for more than 150 yards in either of those games. Right? So this is something you talked about Pete Golding for on the other side for Ole Miss, dialing up something that forces them to run the football. Now, they did so successfully against Ohio State. It's one of the biggest reasons why they were able to salt that game away. That's why I felt like it was poetic justice at the very end, because it felt like all those old school Michigan games against them. They just
easily.
They drove the field, they ran the ball, they controlled the line of scrimmage. And I hear what you say about Mario Cristobal and his boneheaded decisions, but the truth is that if Carson Beck cannot consistently throw for over 150 yards a game, and they're going to force them to run the football, I think Ole Miss has the pieces to be able to hold them up in the run game. And so I think that plays out well to their advantage. And I think that they're going to need to score a lot of points to be this Ole Miss team. So I think Trinidad Chambliss, I think this is a game that really kind of plays into his strengths. And so that's why I think he's going to have a little bit more success. But also, I don't know how much trust I have in Carson Beck to be able to get the job done through the air. I don't think he's capable of really getting it done in that way. I think Miami is versatile on offense, and I think that's helped them out a lot. But that's why I'm taking Ole Miss in this one. But you're taking Miami?
Yeah, it's all about the U, baby.
All right.
It's a Canes.
Right,
I also like seeing Michael Irvin crash out on the sideline all the time.
That's fair. He seems like he's tweaking out a lot lately. I wish I had that guy's zest for life, if that's what it is, a zest for life. I don't know what it is.
In those documentaries, he talked about how he wants to. He's like, every Miami player has a duty to come back and inject wisdom and knowledge to the youth players, and he's doing it. Him and Ray Lewis were on the sideline. I wonder who ultimately is going to be at the semifinal game. And I believe the final is actually in Miami. So if Miami gets to a final, we're going to see the red carpet blow out for those former Miami players, baby coaches as well. But to your point about Ferris State, there's 3 players on active rosters in the NFL, 1 on the Dolphins, 1 on the Vikings, and 1 on the Chargers.
Oh.
There was 5 to start NFL preseason, but only 3 ultimately made it on NFL active rosters.
So moving on to our other semifinal matchup, 3 for a D2 program is still wild too.
Impressive,
by the way, that's very impressive from Tony Annese. I remember people talking about, well, does Michigan go out and offer Tony Annese?
I did see that
coaching job at Michigan. Dude, if you have a stranglehold over Division II, why would you even leave?
I wouldn't leave.
You're the king. You're the king. Yeah, you're the king.
And you wouldn't even want the pressure to be at Michigan, because Ferris State, I'm sure there's some sort of football pressure, maybe with like the board and the donors, maybe that. But that's not on a national level. Like you won't be on ESPN or Fox unless you do something like that Sharon Moore did ultimately, maybe that. But for your performances,
right.
No one's going to talk about it. There's no microscope. Just continue what you're doing.
Right. So continuing on to our second matchup, Indiana and Oregon. Speaking of offensive lines, last time Indiana played against Oregon, they wreaked havoc on Dante Moore. 6 sacks in that game, 130-20 back in October. That was the moment that me and the rest of the Indiana fan base took the opportunity to jump on Ryan immediately after that game. But they got it done against the Ducks, and obviously now have a rematch against Oregon in the college football semifinals. What I will say is getting a rematch is a big deal. We saw that last year, obviously when Ohio State took on Oregon in their game in the playoffs and just just obliterated Oregon. But looking at this matchup and obviously trying to, remember what happened back in October, I know you have certain feelings about Indiana. How do you feel the Hoosiers are going to fare in the college football semifinal?
I think that they're going to be fine. Like Cignetti, I think, has Indiana probably thinking that, like, there's like a you ever wondered that, like, remember back when Georgia won their second national championship against TCU, like that game was over within the first drive, and player like Nolan Smith came out and was like saying people thought this team was going to go 7-5, 8-4, and I'm sitting there go, in what world did people think that you were going 8-4 or 7-5? But I think the good coaches, in any sport can somehow make players delusional. And the fact that either A, they're so good, no one can stop them, they're on the top of the world, and that kind of feeds into a confidence and a swagger, or nobody thinks you're going to win. And I think Cignetti kind of put that on Indiana, like, dude, you guys are Indiana. You guys haven't won anything yet. Yeah, you won a Big Ten. You killed Alabama, but you haven't won anything yet. But then I look at the other side, and Dan Lanning, based on the videos I've seen of him in pregame speeches, he would get me hyped to watch paint dry. Like, what Dan Lanning does in motivational speeches, like, and you're playing Lanning for a second time. And I know that, Washington with Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer, Rome Odunze, that team beat Oregon for a second time in the Pac-12 championship game. Rest in peace to Pac-12. But, there's something that says, Dan Lanning is not going to go, this is not going to be an easy game for Indiana. And I ultimately want to think Indiana is going to run away with this game just because they just seem like a machine. And they're an absolute buzzsaw that they're going to run to a national championship. I ultimately think that with Indiana. But something just tells me Oregon's going to make this a game, and I think it's going to come down to the final drive. And it's whether or not who's going to have the final ball or the final drive, and what quarterback is going to be him ultimately. Is it going to be Fernando Mendoza? Yeah. Again, I think that guy's a cornball, but that's another conversation. Or Dante Moore. And I think whoever has the football on the final drive ultimately wins this football game. But I still think Indiana is going to come away with it by 10 points. But again, I just can't bet against Dan Lanning in a second game and a chance to beat someone for a second time.
I'm looking at USA Today right now and their score predictions, and I'm seeing 3 points separating, 4 points separating. So I think you're right on track with what you're saying. I'll leave it here because I think this is something that's really, when you talk about the sport of football, and it really doesn't matter where it is, right? The game is won and lost in the trenches. Everybody says that, right? It's an overused line, but we see it all the time, right? That's true. The truth, is that the game is won and lost in that area. I think Indiana's the best component to their team this year has been their offensive and defensive lines. Now when you look at recruiting, and this is the thing that I think is the most fascinating part about the Cignetti story, is a lot of transfers, a lot of players that didn't pan out anywhere or elsewhere that have a chip on their shoulder. Oregon's been amongst the top 5 recruiting classes, top 10 recruiting classes in the country year after year. I don't know if Dan Lanning's missed a top 10 recruiting class since he's landed at Oregon. I mean, that's the truth of what they have.
Probably
and
not.
So it creates this unique matchup of the stars versus, not the misfits per se, because Indiana does have a lot of talent, but it is a different looking Indiana team than what we see across the way for Oregon. I just think that their defensive front, with what we saw against Oregon in the first matchup, 6 sacks, not only that, 2 interceptions. So they had Dante Moore running for his life. They had him uncomfortable the entire time. And we see the way that plays out in big time playoff games. If your defensive line can dominate, offenses simply can't move against you. Now, I know Oregon has the weapons to be able to attack Indiana down the field, but if Indiana's defensive line wins out the way that they did their first meeting against Oregon, I think that this is Indiana's game. Much like you're saying, I think it's going to come down to the very end. But Francisco Mendoza has also been just simply automatic. I mean, he was great against Alabama. Didn't really give him a chance. You talk about pinpoint accuracy. I mean, the man can huck it. And I think they have probably, arguably, in my opinion, and again, this is just from watching college football this year, is the most balanced offense in the country. Most balanced offensive approach in the country between running the football and throwing the football. And what I'll say is I know that the arrogance of someone like Curt Cignetti is something that can rub off on you the wrong way. I do think it's important that he wins games. If you can back it up, you can talk any way you want to talk. That's the reality of how this works. But I think the silent intensity is something that is very it's alluring. But I think that him and Dan Lanning are cut from the same cloth. And so I think that's why when I look at this matchup, yeah, exactly. So I thought all four coaches in the semifinal are all Saban disciples. They're all from that tree. So they're all cut from the same cloth. They all understand, they probably go about their business in a very similar way. So that's why I'm saying I think this matchup in particular is going to be the best that this college football playoffs has seen yet. I think without a doubt, at least in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really good. I know last year It was Ohio State, Miami was a good game. Penn State, Notre Dame, again, was a really good game as well. But I would say overall, the whole playoff as a whole has been really good. But if there's been something that, I've seen in the last two is the downfall of the SEC. Like, I was watching last year.
Yeah.
Notre Dame move. Like, I'm talking move Georgia off the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And one of those offensive linemen, Coogan, I believe is his name, is now at Indiana.
Pat.
Yeah, Pat Coogan at Indiana. Great offense. He's a guard, I believe. Guard, right? He's a guard?
Yep. Won MVP.
Yeah, he did.
In the Rose Bowl.
Offensive line won MVP. That's how you know a
Offensive
football
line.
team is really good. But, like, I'm watching, Indiana move Alabama off the ball. And, like, it's been great to see, the downfall of the SEC. And I find it funny that the moment that the playing field got even in terms of recruiting, all of a sudden you see Michigan win a national championship. I see Ohio State win a national championship who beat two SEC teams to get there. Michigan beat Alabama to get there. Retired Nick Saban. I don't argue with the wall. They retired Nick Saban. I don't care. And then you will have this year, regardless of who it is, you'll have another Big Ten team in the national championship, whether that's Oregon or Indiana. That's to be determined. But you've had three teams, and if you look at the Final Four, you have three of the four teams not SEC teams. And you look at it last year, three of the four teams are not SEC teams. Or three of the four teams, aren't SEC teams. But you just wonder, what was Nick Saban doing? What was Urban Meyer doing? What was Kirby Smart doing? I find it interesting. And, like, the SEC, I was watching Feinbaum and Cam Newton, of all people, argue with Ryan Clark. And those two, Feinbaum and Cam Newton, are in such denial. Auburn even won it. How Cam Newton got to Auburn, that's another questionable one. How, like, they're in such denial that the SEC is on the downfall. And just because the playing field is, and I will say this. Last year, Shane Gillis on game day for Notre Dame, Indiana, in South Bend, talked about, you paid players, Nick. Yeah, you did. And Saban lost it. And then after the show, Gillis goes up to McAfee and goes, dude, I think I pissed off Saban. Nah, bro, you're fine. Like, you didn't do anything. And Gillis is like, dude, I think he's pissed. Comes up to Nick Saban and like, hey, man, like, I was just joking up there. Didn't think you actually pay players. And Saban lost it on Gillis. And I can't believe you would say this. When you get that mad and you get that reaction out of someone, it seems like you're guilty.
Yeah. Yep. No, and you're one of, well, and it's funny because you talked about Diego Pavia. I don't know if you were watching that Bussin' with the Boys segment with Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. He's saying, I'm not picking up the phone. Big Ten schools, I'm not picking up the phone. You don't want to go play in the Big Ten. You want to play in the SEC. It just means more. Yeah. All right. I think the bowl season has showed us one thing or another, and that's that the conference isn't what it used to be. However, I got a question for you, Ryan Glinski. If Ole Miss goes on to win a national championship, is the SEC still the SEC? Because then they got a national champion.
They would. I would say it would depend what it would look like. Like, if they went out and obliterated an Indiana or an Oregon, I think you could say one thing. But if it's a tight game and they sneak it out, I wouldn't say so. But I just don't see Ole Miss winning a national championship. I just don't. I don't think Trinidad has enough magic left to carry that. They could ultimately beat Miami. I could see that. But again, the way I view the playoff right now is Indiana's going to win this thing comfortably. That's just the way I personally view it. I could be 100% wrong, but I just view it that way. But to your question, again, people are going to say yes, but I would still say no, because you could also make the argument that their head coach to start the season's not even there. And you could also make the argument that also, like, let's talk about Michigan real quick in 2023. You could have made the again, this is all an assumption because, we're not a fly in the wall, we're not in the locker room, we're not a part of any of that. But what was the whole media during the Michigan run? Oh, they cheated. They have all the signs anyway. Your coach is suspended. That, in a way, I think brings a team together in a way where you can't even fathom how they're going to operate together. Like, that is not only a chip on their shoulder, that's more of a boulder on their shoulder. Like, man, we got to do this for our coach. Everyone's doubting us. Like, you can turn that we talked about the delusion earlier. You can turn that delusion into a positive. Like, no one thinks we can do this. No one thinks the last couple of years are, what are true. Like, they don't actually think we did it the right way. Ole Miss, on the other hand, can see it as our head coach didn't believe in us. He took the job at LSU at midnight and said, F you guys, I'm heading out. Like, they could have turned that delusion, that bond, that brotherhood together, and it turns into like a cloud of like, nobody can stop us, and this confidence that no one can match in the country. So there would definitely be like a little bit of that, but I would have to see it. Again, the Big Ten's only been dominating for 2 or 3 years, you could say, and the SEC's had 10 plus years of domination. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't say the SEC is back to being, the dominant group. But again, you could also make the argument that the Big Ten's not the dominant group anymore because they've only been dominating for 2 or 3 years.
We're going to continue to see the bias. Like, we're not going to get away from that, and I think that's something
like
that's
Christian
hard
Pulisic bias, I would say.
Yeah, it's hard for people to get away from because that's just how it works. Like, Alabama is going to get, if it comes down to Alabama or you getting into the playoffs, Bama's probably going to get that spot. I mean, they're not what they used to
easily
be, but they still have that reputation. They're still arguably the best college football program in the history of the sport, but you're going to get the SEC bias wherever you go, right? Regardless. But I think it also brings up another interesting topic, and I know we got to transition into what else we're doing here. But man, the 12-team playoff, I just don't know how much I really get into all that. It really should be the top 12 teams in the country. And this is something that's frustrating and something that I've been saying a lot off air. And so now that I'm on air, I feel like it's the perfect time to do it. Wishful thinking to think that you can create something like the NCAA basketball tournament, March Madness, and football. Guys, those are 2 different sports. Okay? Tulane would have a very good chance of going out and beating Ole Miss in basketball. Okay? They probably have a good chance if they can shoot, if they can defend. It doesn't matter what
basketball though. Like, I don't know.
No,
last year. I forgot. They went to the Sweet 16 against MSU. My bad.
There you go. All right. So, but anyways, like, a Tulane beating that team is something realistic we can talk about. James Madison going out and beating whoever, Ohio State. That could happen in March Madness. Where it's not going to happen is in college football. And I love it for the schools themselves, right? Let's say hypothetically, right, Central Michigan finds a way to make a run and they go undefeated and they win the MAC, and it's like they're the best at-large bid possible. Woo, fire up. And they're just dominating everyone, right? Like they go on a row the boat run, right? Letting that team into the playoffs would be awesome for CMU and awesome for their fans and awesome for all those people who get to go down and be like, wow, look at Central Michigan University on the national scale. Could go win a national championship, hypothetically. And then they get beat by 45. Why are we playing this game in college football? Why are we pretending with these at-large bids that we're creating any sort of system in which someone can go out and win a national championship that might have not otherwise had a chance? I know we had the UCFs of the world once upon a time. I know we've had the Western Michigan.
Champs?
Oh yeah, I know we've had the TCUs. Oh, TCU would have won a national championship back during the Andy Dalton years. Guys, no, they wouldn't have. The good team, no, they wouldn't have. Okay, that's just me being brutally honest. And even if you want to look at March Madness too, guys, higher seeds still win championships. Just because UMBC beat Virginia in the first round does not mean they're going to go on to win a freaking championship. Okay, so we love seeing those first round upsets. You're not going to get that in college football. So I think this idea that at-large bids, and this is where, Ryan, I don't like standing up for Notre Dame, because I think if there's one program in the country who has an ego larger than anybody else outside of Ohio State, it's Notre Dame, because of history and tradition. Okay, so they think that they're owed an apology after losing 2 games and not getting into the playoffs. Okay, you being married to tradition and being unwilling to evolve in an ever-evolving college atmosphere is your fault. That's not anybody else's fault. That's your fault. Either join a conference or win every one of your damn games and stop complaining. But what I will say is, if there's one thing that I can say for Notre Dame, they were in the top 12 at the end of the year, weren't they? Or were they?
I think
were they in
close.
the AP top 12 at the end of the year?
I think they were. Let's see. They were 11. So BYU
11.
was 12, and Notre Dame was 11.
So they're one of the top 12 teams in the country.
Yes.
If you're going to tell me
Tulane would
you
be
put
20.
James Madison
was 24. Tulane was 20.
You put James Madison or Tulane up against Notre Dame, who's winning that matchup?
Probably
Notre Dame. Yeah. So why are they not in the playoffs? Top 12 teams in the country go to the playoffs.
Because F them. That's
why. It seems so simple. I get it. I understand it. Trust me. Like I don't, like the only time I've ever really been like, oh, Notre Dame should win this game was last year in the national championship. I was more or less just rooting for my TV not to break. I wasn't really rooting for any team in that game. But outside of that, why are the top 12 teams not competing in the playoffs? I just don't like. Now it's worked out perfectly. I like the way it looks now. It's worked out great. This is a great playoffs. Don't get me wrong. It's ridiculous. And now people are even talking about expanding it even further. What are we talking about? So we should not go to an FCS model. We should not go to any of that. We're playing with our food if we do that. It's going to have more games to watch. I think it's dumb. Anyways, go ahead.
It'll be expanded at some point. Like, I think it'll go to 16. It's just how money works. But you also got to change the schedule.
Yeah, you're right.
And I have a scheduling solution to this too. But again, I thought it was great that Notre Dame was left out just because it's Notre Dame, and I hate Notre Dame.
Perfect.
And you got to join something, man. Like, you have to. And then them, taking their ball and going home, and then there's now a new rule for them because I forgot what it was, but there's a rule where, if they're in the top 12, they made a rule with the College Football Playoff Committee where if Notre Dame is in the top 12, they automatically get in, yada, yada, yada. Notre Dame is so sorry. They're a good football team, but just everything else, I hate everything about them. But you're right, Tulane and James Madison. But I think at the same time, though, you have to give the little guys, the smaller schools, a group of 5, something to play for. Because if you're ultimately just going to say, well, if they go 12-0, which in this day and age of college football is pretty hard to do. I mean, Oregon did it, Indiana did, but that was it. And Oregon got boat race in the Rose Bowl last year. But I think you have to have a spot for the group of 5 team just so that they have something to play for. Because, if you're a Central Michigan or a Western Michigan, which I don't want to give Western Michigan credit, but they're looking like a pretty good model for the group of 5 and how things should operate on the football level. I don't want to give them a ton of credit because it's Western Michigan and screw them, but they've done a really good model at it. But you have to give something. You have to give those guys something to play for. It's almost like expanding the World Cup, and we're seeing countries
a national championship for mid majors. Or a second-tier championship.
An NIT?
Or an NIT type thing. Why is that not something that we can consider?
I like, and I've said that before, and not here, obviously, but I like that. I think that's a really good idea for a group of 5, but again, that creates more money. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think they should, but I don't think they would do that. But at the end of the day, if you stick to just one college football playoff format, you have to give the little guys a chance. And I don't think there should be more than one. I think there should just be one, and they're the 12 seed, unless there's some crazy run like a Western Michigan, which that Western Michigan team is actually pretty good. In 2016, gave Wisconsin a run for their money. But I also think that the bigger issue with the college football playoff is you have to mess with the schedule. The scheduling can't be the same.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
The bye,
and
teams
these breaks
that have a bye
too.
Huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're going to touch on it here. Go ahead.
The teams that have a bye are 1-7 in the playoff. They have a month off. And I'm sorry, like, I don't want to be this person, but you can't give Army Navy their own week anymore. Like, I think it's a fantastic rivalry. Like, I love everything about it. It's America. Like, these people are fighting for our country. They're putting their lives on the line. And that's pure football, man. Like, they're not playing for NIL. They're not playing for contracts. They're not playing for anything. But they can't have their own week anymore. You have to do one of two things. You put them at week 0 and you make everything week 0. Like, you put Army Navy as week 0. Or you put Army Navy a part of that college football conference championship weekend, and you don't put the Big Ten as the late game anymore. You put it you end every game. You put every game in that 3:30 slot. End it. You make Army Navy the night game. Because like Army Navy should have like a spotlight. They 100% should, but they can't have their own.
They play
anymore.
in a conference now, though, right? So that changes things. Because if you play in a conference, like they won a conference championship. So
I think they have to make it week 0 then if that's the case. Like, you have to put them at week 0 because they shouldn't have their own week anymore. So my solution is you get rid of the Army Navy week. Let's put it at week 0 just because you mentioned a good point. They're in their own conference. So you get rid of that. So the week after, like, look at the NFL. They already have playoff games next week. You have to play that first round that next week. And then you play the quarterfinal round that week where the first round normally is, like right before Christmas, like a couple days before Christmas. Then you play your traditional 4, your semifinals, during the New Year's Eve time, whether that's New Year's Eve or whether that's New Year's Day, whatever that is. Then you get those 4. And then you play the national championship the way that it's been, like the January 8th, January 9th, January 10th, like around that span. Because when's the national championship? Like, is it the national championship like in the 20s this year, like January 19th or the 20th? Like, it's something crazy. Like, it can't go on like this anymore. Like, it's a month long.
It can't. Yeah. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with moving the Army-Navy game, but I do think that there is a way or something they have to do.
Or
it's just because Dan Lanning said that too. Or
you put what you do is like I said with the conference championships, where you make sure Army Navy has that spotlight at night. And you still make the Army Navy game the night game, or it's that Friday, and you do all the quarterfinal games those first round on the semi or that Saturday. But you can still give Army Navy that spotlight, but they can't have their own week anymore. They just can't.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, circling back on your point about Notre Dame, I just wanted to work this in very quickly. And this comes from John Burrows on Twitter, and I thought this is a really good tweet. If you think you deserve to be in over the Sun Belt champion, you're always welcome to join it to join the Sun Belt and prove that. Fair. If you think you deserve to be in over Miami in the ACC, you are always welcome to join the ACC. Now, again, they compete in the ACC in other sports. Football is a different story, still an independent. If you think you deserve to be in over the American champion, you are always welcome to join the American Conference. You're not special. Join a damn conference. There we go. That's my TED Talk. All right.
I like
there
it.
You go, Notre Dame.
Those are great points. I think that's great. If Notre Dame wants to join the MAC, they're more than welcome to join the MAC.
Yep. Hey, yeah, the MAC or the whatever, man. I mean, you go, yeah, whatever. So interesting. It's just I know we're in the Midwest, so we got to deal with actually Notre Dame fans all the time. There's a healthy portion of them in the state of Michigan as well. So that's what it is. But a fascinating semifinal coming up. What's up?
So real quick, again, this isn't like confirmed by a source, but Dave Portnoy, Barstool, interviewed Kyle Whittingham today, new Michigan football head coach, and he was asked about Bryce Underwood. Whittingham's quote is, "I think Bryce is in a good place right now, and I think he might be getting an announcement here pretty soon." Kyle Whittingham. That seems like an encouraging sign. Like, again. If we want to talk about something else, we can absolutely talk about something else. But just touching on Bryce Underwood real quick, I think the kid has a ton of potential. I think he's got everything. He's got the arm strength. He's got the size. He's got the mobility. But at the same time, his mechanics look off. Also, also, this whole year, I think you could throw as a wash at this point. Like, your coach is DMing only fan models. There was no coaching. Sharon Moore didn't talk to his coordinators. Like, I think he was also put in a really bad spot, and I don't think when he accepted the $12 million, he ever thought that's what's going to happen. I also don't think any college football Michigan fan thought that as well coming in.
No, that's on Ward Manuel is what that's on.
I got to take on Ward Manuel. On all the effed up things that have happened since he's taken over as AD, like I'm talking, who remembers Jeff Jackson? Xavier Simpson with the AD car gets pulled over, and the cops are like, dude, I know you're Xavier Simpson. Stop lying. You have the Juwan Howard hire, slaps coaches. You have the old president Schlissel. Then you have the Bo Schembechler stuff that came out. And then you had the whole science thing. Then you have Sharon Moore, whatever. I'm telling you, Ward Manuel's got some dirt on somebody. He's got pictures. He's got videos. He's got quotes. He's got audio of something so effed up in the University of Michigan that's gonna, like, if Ward Manuel gets fired, he's gonna just release it, and then it's like the Joker in the Batman movies where he just walking out of the doctors and it's just boom boom boom, just everything blows up. Like, that's going to happen with Ward Manuel if he ever gets fired or released. Like, I'm telling you, he's got some dirt on a ton of people, and it's just going to, like, he's just going to release it because there is no way any any university would allow all this stuff to happen and you still have a job. There's no way. But yeah. I digress on that point, but no, I think just with Underwood, back to the point, I think he's finally going to have some good coaching. I think what Jason Beck has done with Dampier and what Whittingham's done with Cam Rising, I think Underwood will be put in a much better spot in 2026.
Tyler Huntley, I mean, back 2017 to 2020, that's a throwback name right there. No, he's great, and I think he's going to be awesome. And I know I saw one of your videos talking about, is he a bridge coach? I don't think you bring in a guy who's been in the game for 2 decades as a bridge coach personally, and obviously we've seen
think it's
from
just the age.
Yeah, it could be.
He's also 64, so
right. Well, and when you're getting compliments and high praise from Urban Meyer, I mean that should tell you something right there. And he already said, he said that he expects him to go win a championship with Michigan. And that was a part of an interview with Dave just a day ago on Barstool Sports. So no, I think it's a fascinating story. Sharon was a mistake to begin with. I think we can admit that now. I think you wanted to keep that continuity from a championship team the previous year. And to that degree, I get it, right? You just won a championship. Why would you hire someone from the outside? Because you realize that that's going to result in transfers, right? You want to keep at least the bulk of that team together, which again, when we talk about, especially that Ohio State game, our defensive line won that game. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham. I mean, those guys are the reasons why we beat OSU. Josiah Stewart, right. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we won that game. And it makes all the difference in the world. And that's why Harbaugh was so good, because he developed great lines, offensive lines, defensive lines. Like, that's where they started to win their games, especially when they went on to win a championship. So I think I don't know. I think it's a great hire for Michigan, all things considered. I know that's our next, so we can just roll into this if you want. So if I'm going to grade that hire for Michigan, I thought Kenny Dillingham was the best coaching prospect in football.
I thought so too.
But for Michigan fans, what I will say is there's a feeling of, okay, there's an adult in the room now. We have an adult in the room. We got a grown-up. We got a guy who's been here for 2+ decades. He's won multiple Pac-12 titles. He's developed a lot of great players, arguably over the course of his career in terms of sustained success. He's one of the best college coaches really to ever do it. I think he's on that list. But that is the thing about this hire that I think is most promising for me, is you don't need, and when you're at Michigan and you're able to acquire some of the talent that they have, you don't even need to necessarily be the greatest coach in the world. You just need to be an adult and know how to set a foundation and a culture for your team. Because the more details that I see come out about the Sharon Moore situation and how guys are getting kicked out of facilities because he needs alone time with his friend, is a little messed up. You think Kurt Cignetti's doing that? You think Kurt Cignetti's like, hey, I need a little time alone with my ex, like what the hell? Like, players knew it. Everybody knew it. But yet we just turned a blind eye because we had to, right? Because we're not going to blow the program up in the middle of the season. So there is that sense of there's an adult in the room now, and I love that for Michigan fans. I'll give it an A- in terms of a grade for Michigan's hire.
I would say for my grade, I'd give it a B plus. I'd give it a B plus. And I say this because I still think the age plays a little bit of a factor. I think 66, and I think that, and I also don't think anybody would take the job because I think Ward Manuel's job is going to be up in the air until he resigns, gets fired, retires, whatever. And you also don't have a president. Like I don't think Michigan right now in terms of athletics really has anything. Like I don't think a big time coach like a Kalen DeBoer. I thought Kalen DeBoer would be another good option, but again, he won his playoff game against Oklahoma. Now, if he loses to Oklahoma, I think we're having a different discussion here on January 5th. I really do, because I think Michigan goes hard after Kalen DeBoer immediately after that. But that didn't happen. And I liked Kenny Dillingham a lot as well. I think he's a young up and comer, and he constantly voices the urge of, we need money. He lost Sam Leavitt, his star quarterback, not because Leavitt didn't want to be there, but Leavitt's getting, reportedly, $3-4 million to go to Kentucky. Like, you as a football program, you can't lose to Kentucky. Like, if you want to ultimately win a national championship, you can't be losing recruits and players to Kentucky. But I think with Kyle Whittingham, and another thing that I'm a little bit worried of is he has not been on this side of the Rockies. He's not been on this side to coach. He's been at Utah for the last 20 years. And yet he knows the Utah area, that Salt Lake City area, that West Coast. But I ultimately don't know if players are going to want to make that trip, east, that far east. I don't know. Like, some of them have at Michigan. Like, I look at Roman Wilson. He's all the way from Hawaii. I look at Colson Loveland, who's from Idaho. I look at Mason Graham, who's from California. But I don't know if that's going to help all the time. But I also, he's putting a great staff together. Whittingham's putting a great staff together. And I think that he still has talked about who he has that want to still coach. Like, he still has that energy. And I think you're right, though. There's now an adult in the room with Michigan now. And I also look at Dusty May, who's doing a phenomenal. That's a conversation we can have this week, dude. Like, they are a machine. What they're doing, winning by 30, 40 every single week. And I think you also have another adult in the room with Dusty May. But when you have a guy like Kyle Whittingham, it's going to be mature now. It's going to be very professional. It's going to be very businesslike. And also some of the coaches. I'm looking at Jay Hill. I'm looking at Jason Beck. I'm looking at Jim Harding. And he's putting together himself a really nice staff. Now, I would really like to see them hit the portal hard now. And it's not going the way that I would have liked at this point. But again, I think the staff is now solidified in terms of everything. And how much of an upgrade is that staff, Nate? Like, From this past year, like Wink Martindale, what are we doing? The dude sucks. Chip Lindsey sucks. And it's so much of an upgrade as well. But no, I think Whittingham is a good hire. And I think if you look over at Michigan State, Pat Fitzgerald, I think it's another. I think the Michigan hire, this isn't just a Michigan bias, but I think Whittingham is a better hire than Fitzgerald simply because of the fact, again, you can make the Northwestern argument if you want, but we've seen Fitzgerald in the NIL era, and he was 1-11, 2-10, 3-9, and he's been out for a couple of years. So I don't know what I'm getting with Pat Fitzgerald, but I know what I'm getting with Kyle Whittingham. I know it's going to be physical football. It's going to be very professional-like, and he's going to develop some sort of a quarterback that's going to be way better than what we saw these past 2 years, really.
I still respect the heck out of Pat Fitzgerald. I still think he's a good hire, but you're right. To that degree, I think Kyle Whittingham is a better hire, but we'll have to see how it plays out. I still think Michigan State's going to win more games than what they have. Won a game in the last 3 years with their eligibility, the eligibility debacle, everything that's going on there. Yeah, who ended up vacating games again? Interesting. Anyways,
Michigan State has, Ohio State has. Just saying.
Yep. Interesting. Anyways. But I do, the one thing I will say about Kyle Whittingham, and I think when you ask Michigan people, they're like, no one really knows who he is because the majority of his primetime games were at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, unless you were really staying up to watch Pac-12 after dark, which my best friend is an Oregon fan, right? So he knows all too well about Pac-12 after dark. That was his whole childhood growing up. But you didn't see him in his biggest games, right? So for Michigan fans from this area who are like, who the heck is this guy? You didn't see him in those games. And I think it's important to realize, the Pac-12 is what it used to be. It is not the Big Ten, right? Like Indiana, Ohio State, Penn State's going to look really good under Campbell that they just got. Michigan's obviously going to look. It's not what the Big Ten is. But he still had Washington to navigate every year. He still had Oregon to play every year. So, I mean, he's played consistently against some really good programs in that conference. But you're right. BYU. It's not the Big Ten. BYU. So, but how does he establish recruiting in Michigan? Because if you look at it, right, Pat Fitzgerald is coaching high school ball in the Midwest. He's from the Midwest, born and raised around here. He knows the area. He knows all that. The Michigan brand is going to help a lot. The NIL funding is going to help a lot. But if Michigan State wanted to get someone that maybe is a little bit more competitive in getting local recruits, because you look at Mel Tucker, the one thing that I think Mel Tucker did extremely well before obviously everything that happened, Mel Tucker was winning the recruiting battle in Michigan. He was getting better players in Michigan than what Jim Harbaugh was. He was winning that battle. And then obviously everything that happened, and it all fell apart. So I think if MSU wanted to get someone that could capitalize on what they have in the Midwest, they got someone there. Pat, I'll give Pat a B+ hire for Michigan State, which is a lot better than what I was expecting when obviously Jonathan Smith was let go from that program. But I think they got a good one. I don't think he's winning a championship, but he's going to make them competitive again.
Yeah, I think that, again, that's another thing that worries me about Whittingham is kind of Jonathan Smith. Like, he didn't really understand the Michigan State rivalry until the second time. And Whittingham was asked in his introductory press conference of, do you hate Ohio State? And he's like, well, I do now, I guess. Like, you can't. No, they'll break him
in. Right, that's true.
Like,
that's true.
You can't say that, because not only are Michigan fans going to hate that, but like, you can't just say that. Like, you just can't. But I will say this though. I think that there's going to be some stability now, and with like, if we looked at Michigan recently athletics, like in the 20s, like you had Juwan Howard running basketball, and then you had a hockey scandal as well. Then you had Harbaugh doing the Harbaugh things, So, but I think that there's a bunch of stability now in terms of recruiting. That's why I think that they kept Lou Esposito, their D-line coach, because, he's been there a while. And
he's a great recruiter. Yeah.
And you have the Midwest, and you still have Tony Alford, the running backs coach, who kind of kept Savion Hyder, the 5-star from Pennsylvania, a part of there. Then you look at the Penn State wide receiver coach comes over. So he has, in terms of his staff, in terms of the recruiting, there's a couple of people that are kind of put in spots where it's like, that's a little strange why they're part of the coaching staff. But again, you also have to remember that 10 staffers are just like out-of-state recruiters. Like, they can go and visit, they can go and in-home visit. So maybe that's why some people are positioned in the way they are, and that's going to, like, Kyle's like, all right, you're going to be just strictly an in-home. You're going to be like a defensive analyst or an offensive analyst, but you're going to be an in-state recruiter and go on visits. So I think that ultimately could be the case. But, I think that is something to be worthwhile to look at for in the future.
So that'll wrap up our show here on Inside the Game. First hour is soccer, second hour doing a little bit of all sports, talking about college football. I know we wanted to get into the NFL. We also totally forgot about question of the day, but we'll make sure we get something like that in tomorrow. But a great conversation about all that. And again, a really fun semifinal coming up. A lot of two really good matchups. So I realize it's not a 4-team format anymore, but if now that it's down to 4 teams, this is a perfect 4 teams that I like. And really, there's no team in that mix that I wouldn't mind seeing win a national championship. Ole Miss, Oregon, Indiana. I mean, there's a lot of different, not the typical ones you're used to seeing, Georgia's, Bama's, OSU's of the world. So it's cool to see that we're going to have some pretty interesting matchups. But that wraps things up for us. Appreciate, again, all of you guys who came back after the long hiatus. Inside the Game rolls along. We're going to continue staying with this format, 2-hour show every day. We're going to give you your soccer fix in the first hour, and we're going to dive into some football, maybe some basketball and some other things in hour number 2. But we'll bring you guys some of the top storylines from across the sports world. Before we leave, make sure you follow us on social media at National Soccer Network. Like, subscribe, follow. Also follow the TikTok page. We put a lot of good stuff up on there, and we'll make sure that we bring this to you guys every single morning, Monday through Friday. But until we catch you for episode 202, this has been 201. Welcome back for season 2 of Inside the Game. We'll catch you guys tomorrow at 9 a.m.
From the biggest matches to the hottest takes, Jonathan Turner and Nathan Wangler bring you the stories, the analysis, and the edge you won't get anywhere else. Streaming live weekdays at 9 a.m. on YouTube, Roku TV, Facebook, Twitter, and all major platforms. No filters, no fluff, just real talk, real soccer. This is Inside the Game.